Hi, Christine. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I am doing great. I am, first of all, fascinated by the concept of a food stylist, and the food in Julia all looked amazing. It made me very hungry. So I think you did your job. But how did the union of you and Julia happen? What excited you most about being part of this project?
Oh, well, I'm a Boston native, so she's part of our fabric as not only a national treasure, but a local icon. And so to take on and be trusted, I should say, to work as a food stylist and bring Julia Child's food to life, for Sarah to then just work her magic with was a huge honor. So, but I growing up with Julia Child, being a native of Massachusetts outside of Boston. So it was always on, usually by the time I reached my age, it was on the weekends. And my father would sit there with his newspaper before cell phones, and he just would howl. And being from a food centric family, we would cook all cultural foods because we loved it so much. But Julia definitely inspired mostly my dad more than my mom to cook from her book. So his claim to fame was the duck l'orange. So, which I was very thrilled to see as one of the dishes highlighted.
I love that. Also, I love that the show recreates episodes of The French Chef. Like we get to go behind the scenes. So what was that process like for you? Did you have to do a lot of French Chef viewing? How do you, add to or change the recipes in order to make them, to make the look right, I guess?
Well, having watched all the episodes growing up, but with a different sort of magnifying glass, back then, as to be in this situation where we're really dissecting her actual recipes in the cookbook and executing them from our stage kitchen, which was right outside of both Julia's home kitchen and WGBH. So we operated in this stage kitchen that was an industrial grade, commercial grade space. So, we were preparing all the foods and hopping to one door to get to WGBH French Chef, or going the other door to get to Julia's house. So in both circumstances, like everything was, as we say in restaurants, cooked to order. So we were always prepared, and all the food was her recipes down to the twine used for trussing chickens and ducks and whatnot. So it was all real, authentic Julia Child cooking.
Oh, wow. I love that. There were so many great, recipes and foods, but also there's so many different kinds of food being presented, not just French chef meals, but also ones in her own home. And then they even go to restaurants. So what is your approach to those different types of meals or dishes,
Well, that was one of the more exciting parts, because Julia Child was not just an educator, but she loved to learn and indulge in other cultures. And Chinese food was actually one of her favorite foods, cuisine. So to then know that, to study Joyce Chen's cookbook, her original cookbook, and cook from that, not only like this experience on Julia brought me into, a different chef's language. And so in that scene where they're at Joyce Chen, you're seeing her authentic Chinese food dishes from her cookbook. And that was such a thrill, as was Lutèce, which is this incredible French restaurant that is no longer from New York City. And then a farm to table restaurant that was scripted. And back then it's like, well, what was farm to table? And so designing a menu or foods that reflect, restaurants like Chez Panisse, bringing in Alice Waters, her legacy to the culinary world. So that was a really wonderful piece to work on. So it was great to sort of assist Julia with her process in preparing foods for camera. It was great doing the set dressing for those makings, like the French bread episode with Paul and Judith, and then switch gears to then doing restaurant scenes, which really just was one of the exciting things that Paul and Julia and her friends enjoyed. And that was just sitting and enjoying all the foods, and nothing's better than talking over really good food.
Absolutely. I wish that I could enjoy that food with them, but alas.
But you can.
Yes, I can on my own. I can without them. Now I love, I read that you spoke about a food stylist really wanting to bring the emotion out of the food. Mm-hmm. And wanting to approach the food with like what it needs to say to the audience, what kind of feeling it needs to bring out in the audience. So what would you say Julia wants her food to say? And then by proxy, what is the aspect are you trying to bring out when you style this?
Well, her approach was to make the food accessible to all. And French cuisine is probably the most difficult by far, technically, foods to try to replicate. So, her humbling self, as in her process on the French chef, just made it just accessible to us and relatable and comfortable. And that was part of her genius, just her being her authentic self. As a food stylist, having designed everything to have it execute on site, to then prepare it for camera or prepare, it's what was great is it's food it's just the celebration of food in its most natural and most, my theory is like the less you touch food as a food stylist, the better, and just let the food sing for itself. And so because Julia Child was not a fussy chef, she wasn't a finesse, skilled chef. So that allowed for me to style things just rustically and simply and organically for whatever scene was needed. But I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it did. It did. I was just wondering, obviously, like you said, her food, or she makes the food more accessible, or the recipes more accessible, but was there any point at which a particular recipe or a particular dish did not work out for that scene that you guys had to switch it or discuss something else?
Nope. So we had the opportunity and the support from the production to work on these recipes, because we could do it once and take photos and I did that right from the get-go with the pilot, just videotaping a process with my phone or photographing it and taking notes. And then it just like evolved into, something like a souffle, where that's very, very time sensitive. And this is a real dish. It's not a fake souffle. So just like working closely with, Daniel and Chris and the director that, because we had different directors and the crew, cameraman, for everyone to understand the temperamental aspect of food in itself and just be respectful of the process, because food scenes should be treated just with as much care as like a car crash. Anything could happen. So I had full support to bring everything to set and in multitudes for resets and such. But there was weeks of recipe development, because the ingredients are different here in 2000. We were shooting in 2021, 2020, than they were in the 60s. So just making sure that her recipes using our eggs, our flour, different from the 60s, would have the same result. And her recipes are completely foolproof. Like there was never a tweak or a change or anything put on steroids to make something more beautiful for camera. Like her food is her food. And that was something that was advocated. So it wasn't, it just sang for itself. And I'm very, I have a lot of gratitude for that, because that's not always the case with on-screen food styling.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's more important than ever in a show like Julia. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much. It was so wonderful. I cannot wait for everyone to witness it. And then hopefully we all start following Julia's recipes once again.